Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And today's range report is on another really cool, kind of historic pistol. This is the Browning High Power Practical. Yeah, so this is not one of the military surplus ones or just ones generally off the line. This was a pistol that was designed and developed in the 1980s and early 90s as an accurized version of the high power, primarily for civilian sales, that's supposed to have a little bit better trigger, a little bit better sights than the standard. So maybe they were going for a competition high power. Not 100% sure, but this is a discontinued gun from Browning, and it was made in Belgium and assembled in Portugal, so most likely this is made in the FN factory. And as I said, it is one that was designed primarily for the civilian market that was trying to overcome some of the shortcomings that a lot of people complained about with the standard high power. Very, very interesting gun. This particular example is chambered in 9mm. I'm going to talk about all the things I like and don't like, but before I do, as always, I want to thank the people that make these range reports possible. First and foremost is the owner of this really cool high power. He's a good friend of the channel. His name is Richard. Richard, thank you so much for lending another really cool gun to the channel for me to review. As always, I want to thank my Patreon supporters, because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on and keep all this content coming. I couldn't do it without them. And if you guys are interested in joining my Patreon and seeing all these videos early, you can check the link in the description below, and you can join for as little as $1 a month. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor, who always provides all of the ammunition for these range reports, thus making them financially feasible, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And I have to tell you, I'm making this video at the very perfect time. Mark at Brownworks, as you guys know, is an artist. He's a craftsman. He makes a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. And recently he contacted me and said, hey, I finally got all of my new Browning high power grips on my website. People have been requesting that this becomes a standard product in his lineup, and he has delivered. So just like any other grip that you can order made out of laminate wood, exotic materials, put on custom logos, custom engravings, custom textures, well, now he offers an entire line of Browning high power grips as well. So take a look at that. As I always tell you guys, he's always adding to what he makes and listening to his customers. Every set of grips he makes is one of a kind, one-off, and custom made to order. So if you have a barbecue Browning high power, if you have a family heirloom Browning high power, Mark is the guy to contact. I'm going to put a link in the comment section below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. I'm going to ask you guys to go over there, see what he has to offer, and make sure to contact Mark. And when you do, please tell him the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so let's talk about what this high power is. As you can see, it's kind of cool looking. It's a two-tone. Yes, this once again is imported by Browning, made in Belgium and assembled in Portugal. We all are familiar with these typical roll marks that many of the Browning high powers have. This one is chambered in 9mm. It has an epoxy finish, which is the same as their Mark III finishes, but the slide obviously is black and the frame is silver. It's not a stainless receiver, just an epoxy finish, and I think that looks absolutely fantastic. I think that the high powers in two-tone look absolutely wonderful. So let's talk about the things that I like and don't like. And as always, I always want to start with the positive first. And the first thing I love about this gun is that it's a high power. It's John Moses Browning's last design. Really, he didn't finish it. One of his proteges did, but he started this process. And a lot of people say it was his last design. And because of that, it has a lot of history. It's known around the world as the P-35. It has been the military sidearm of many, many countries, both enemies and friends of the United States. And it's my understanding that these are still used in some militaries around the world. And you guys know I geek out when it comes to the history and mechanics of guns. So it's just really cool that this gun has that military provenance. I know it's not as loved and adored as a 1911, but still there are many people that find the Browning high power to be a superior firearm, even compared to many guns that are made today. And like all John Moses Browning designs, when you hold one of these, it just feels very natural in your hand. I kind of feel like miniguns today, the grip angle is an afterthought. They design the gun and they're like, okay, let's make this thing ergonomic. When you hold a high power, it's like holding a 1911. Yeah, the grip profiles are a little bit different. They just feel very natural in your hand. And I kind of feel like John Browning designed them that way. He said, how can I make this gun feel comfortable, and then I'm going to make it effective. I don't know if that's actually the process he went through, but all of his guns really always do feel very comfortable in your hand. From the grip angle to the width of the frame, it's just a naturally shooting pistol because of that grip design, and I really like that. Another thing that this model offers that I do like is it has the older and more traditional style of hammer. I have a couple of Browning high powers myself that are a lot more modern, and they have the more spur type. This one is the, I guess they call it the combat or the commander style, that is rounded with that hole. And I've always liked this because that's what I see on many of the originals from the 1930s and the 1940s. So I've always liked that. And I've always heard too that these will give you less hammer bite, but we're going to talk about that when it comes to the things that I don't like about this pistol. I'm also a big fan of this finish. It's not a blued finish, like I said, but it's an epoxy finish that seems to be rather durable. I do like the two-tone look, that black slide, that silver frame. Yeah, that's really nice. And then, of course, there are the grips and the grip panels. Now, it is my understanding, and Richard told me, these are not the original grips that came on this gun. The originals were a wraparound with finger grooves, and I'm not a big fan of those either. But these grips, he said, are discontinued from Uncle Mike's, and I guess they were a popular option back in the 1990s. But if you owned one of the practical models with those wraparound grips and you don't like those finger grooves, well, go to my sponsor, Brownworks. I'm telling you, he'll make awesome grips just as nice as these. But I always review the guns as they are given to me to review, and these come with these really nice Uncle Mike's grips. They're standard profile. They feel really good in my hand. They're kind of made of a hard rubber, so I do like that a lot. The last thing that I think that they improved for the civilian market was the sights. Now remember, this gun was made in the late 80s and early 90s, but instead of having a little tiny blade sight, they actually have a ramped front sight. Now you don't have adjustable sights in the rear, but I feel like this ramp sight in the front is designed for more accurate shooting. And we're going to talk about the trigger too and whether I like it or not. I'd actually put that more in the neutral category, but this trigger is a little bit different as well. But it's not one of those things that I want to say I really like, and I'm not going to mention it here. But the sights and the trigger are two things that they did that I think to upgrade this pistol over the standard model. So now let's talk about a couple things that I don't like. And the first thing I don't like is the same complaint I pretty much have on every high power, and that is every single one of the originals gives me hammer bite. And let me show you why. I kind of have meaty hands, maybe a little bit fatty hands, and as you can see, when I ride this gun kind of high, which is the traditional modern way of doing things, you can already see that that fleshy part around my thumb is kind of going over that beaver tail. And so when this hammer comes back, yeah, it's gonna pinch. And I have to be really careful. So what I have to do is hold this gun down on the grip a little bit more. It does not feel as natural to me. And I like to be able to hold my guns high on the grip to get that bore axis as low as possible. It's my understanding in the new high powers that FN is making, they have extended that and they've changed the design of the hammer to prevent that hammer bite. Now I know a lot of people that don't have any issue with this. I think it's honestly just my hand. But if you have kind of fleshy hands like I do, you might experience hammer bite on a lot of high powers, and that's something that I experience, and it's one of the downsides to most high powers for me and why I don't own more. And the other thing about this gun that I don't like is the same thing I complain about pretty much every other high power, and that is the magazines don't drop free. Yeah, they didn't want them to. You have to strip these out. It's just the way the Europeans like them. I know here in the United States, we like it when we push that magazine button and that magazine just flies out of there. So that can make reloading a little bit more of a chore. I just like the more modern ways of doing things, but I understand that a lot of people don't have any issues with that. As I said, these have been adopted by militaries and police departments. They haven't had an issue with it as long as you train that way. I just like to be able to push that mag button and have that magazine drop clear, free of that gun, because it's one less thing I have to do when reloading. So those are the things here on the table that I like and don't like. So let's get this thing to the range. Let's just see how it shoots. And does it shoot any better than a standard high power? So as always, I'm going to start with a target at 7 yards, load up one of these magazines, and I'm going to take a few shots at this target, see if I experience any malfunctions, what my initial impressions are, if I discover anything about the gun that I like or don't like that I didn't figure out here on the table, and just get my initial impressions. So let's get to the range. And I've shot quite a few high powers in my time, and I have to say this one honestly stands out. The action of this one is silky smooth, and the recoil impulse is a lot less than many other high powers I've held. You know, when you shoot these and compare them to, let's say, a Beretta 92 or a Glock 17, these aren't unmanageable, but you go, yeah, they're a little bit more snappy. I think it has to do with the recoil spring and the hammer spring and them being a little bit more stout. And there's many companies today that offer aftermarket ones that can adjust that, but this one coming just from the factory like this, it's really smooth. It feels great in my hand. As I said, these are natural pointing guns just because of the grip angle and how they feel in my hand. I've always liked that. Just wish that beaver tail was a little bit longer, but I'm really impressed with this, and I seem to shoot it pretty darn accurate. So I'm impressed with it, and that's my first impressions so far. All right, so now I'm going to double the distance of this target. I'm going to go for the head on this IDPA silhouette, make sure the accuracy continues, and see if I discover anything else about this pistol that I like or don't like. And this gun is continuing to be a naturally shooting pistol for me. I just have to be very aware of that hammer bite. I was shooting it in that, and I had to adjust my hand down. I realized, uh-oh, I'm starting to ride it a little bit high. But luckily, it didn't pinch me. I just became a little bit aware of it. But so far, this high power is shooting like a dream. It's probably the nicest high power I've ever shot. All right, so now the next test I want to do is the bench rest test. So far, this thing has been really accurate, so I'm expecting good results. And after this test, I want to talk a little bit more about this trigger and my thoughts about it, and also do a trigger pull gauge with it and see what weight it's actually breaking at. So let me bench rest this, put another magazine through this, and see how it performs. All right, so unfortunately I was not as accurate that time as I was hoping to be, but I want to talk about this trigger because there's some things about this trigger that I really like and a couple things that I don't. The first thing I want to talk about, and of course let me safety check the gun. Now unfortunately I do have to put the magazine in to do this and show you because it still has the magazine safety disconnect, which is one of those things that people are going to say, oh, it ruins the trigger pull of those guns. However, it has been my experience that if they are made right and you have a competent gunsmith, you can keep that disconnect in there and still have a pretty darn good trigger pull. So let me show you this trigger pull here. So we have quite a bit of take-up. It's not too bad, but you do hit a wall and it's a pretty darn clean break. Then let me reset it. And here is the first thing about this trigger that I don't like. That was the reset. You might not even have heard it. I like tactile and audible resets. Now that's kind of a modern thing. I totally get it. And when this gun was designed, people didn't shoot with a modern handgun technique. However, I do like that in modern pistols, and this gun doesn't have it and has a longer reset. So I can see shooting this thing fast and accurate might be a little bit more difficult for me. Now, something else that I'm also noticing is because this trigger is exceptionally curved more than many other triggers that I have fired, I am actually finding it much more comfortable to put way too much finger in the trigger guard. I know that is bad technique, but when I have my finger out here, it doesn't feel very comfortable because how curved it is. I'm actually putting way too much finger in that trigger guard, and that's just where it shoots comfortably for me. Back here, it just doesn't feel right. I kind of feel like my trigger finger is getting pinched, but that is much more natural for me. So yeah, now let's go ahead and check the trigger pull of this. I do have to say this might be one of the lightest Browning high power triggers I've ever shot. Now this one is not a target trigger. However, for a stock trigger, it's definitely better than any one that I own. So let me adjust the camera. Let's get out the Lineman trigger pull gauge. And by the way, thank you so much, Craig, for giving it to the channel because you said you want to see me review these guns and show the trigger pull weight, so now we can do it. So let me adjust that camera as I said, and let's see what the pull of this trigger is. All right, so here we go with the Browning High Power Practical and the Lineman trigger pull gauge. Once again, thank you so much, Craig. I do appreciate the gift to the channel because people are always asking me about the trigger pulls of these guns I review. I've never had a gauge before. All right, so let's do a few pulls of this and let's find out the average. Our first pull, we have 4 pounds, 12.2 ounces. See if I can get that on camera there. All right. Our next pull, £5, 1.9 ounces. £5, 5.2 ounces. And let's do one more. And this time we have 5 pounds, 3.7 ounces, which gives us an average of 5 pounds, 1.8 ounces. So I think that's a pretty darn good trigger pull for a Browning high power, and I definitely think better than many of the standard models. So I think this thing actually has a pretty darn good trigger. It's not perfect. I sure wish it had a better reset, but when this gun was designed, people didn't shoot like they do today, so I can forgive it. All right, so let's now move on to what the next test is going to be. All right, so we've talked a lot about the trigger, so now let's move on to another test, the hollow point test. When it comes to these European guns, I have discovered, especially if they're older, sometimes they can be a little bit finicky when it comes to hollow points. And if you own one of these, you might want to use it for self-protection or home defense or carry it. And of course, you want to make sure that hollow points run well in these. Now, I've never heard of anybody having any issues with a Browning high power and running hollow points, but it's just one of those standard tests that I like to put every pistol that I review through. So here we go. I'm going to run some hollow points through this and just make sure that it functions. And as expected, it ran great. No issues whatsoever. All right, so now the next test I want to do is give my wife Becky a chance to shoot this. You guys know when she's around, I want to give her a chance to shoot every gun that comes through the Texas Gun Vault. She's a very different shooter than I am. She has different sized hands, different shaped hands, and sometimes there's things about the gun that I don't think about that she does. She's also a female shooter, and sometimes her perspective can be very enlightening. So let me load up another magazine in this gun, give her a chance to shoot it, and see what her thoughts and opinions are. And while her grouping wasn't really as good as I was hoping, she actually really liked the gun, said it was very soft shooting. The only thing that she said that she noticed is that the side of the trigger is kind of sharp, and how she put her finger into the trigger guard and how it rested on the side of the trigger. This edge was a little bit sharp and not as comfortable as it possibly could be. So maybe having that dehorned a little bit might be a good option if you don't like that feel. All right, so the last test I want to do is going to be the quick magazine change. Now I think I'm actually going to have some issues on this. Actually, I already know I'm going to have some issues on this. After all, the magazine does not drop free, and this trigger is not the best, as I said, for shooting fast. I can't feel that reset, and the reset is really long, and I'm just used to more modern handguns. But as always, I want to show you guys all of my personal experiences. So here we go. I'm going to try to shoot this thing as fast as I possibly can, get a new magazine in this thing, get the gun back in action, shoot another magazine as fast as I can, and just see what happens and if I have any problems. And yeah, I had quite a few issues there. I'm kind of embarrassed by that, and I wasn't even sure I was going to show you that footage. But then I thought to myself, in my range reports, I want to make sure that I'm always upfront and honest with you guys and show you all the experiences that I had. And I had three major issues. Not only does this magazine not drop free, but when you try to pull it, it gets stuck. It's really tight in that mag well, which is going to slow you down. Then when it comes to the mag well itself, it is the exact same size and shape as the magazine. There is no flare to it at all, so if you miss it or you're off by a little bit, it's going to slow you down, and I know I did. It took me a second to find it, and I can only imagine if you're trying to reload this gun under duress, that could be an issue. And then you'll also notice I had a weird rhythm when it came to trying to shoot this gun fast, and that's because this trigger reset is so long. In fact, I even got to the end. I thought I was done. I thought I had released the trigger all the way, pulled the trigger back, and it didn't go bang. Well, I guess I'm done. Well, surprise, I wasn't. And that's just because the trigger is not like a modern trigger. I definitely feel if I was going to use this in competition, that's something that I would have to address, either change out the trigger or just train with it a lot more. I definitely prefer modern triggers. But that was my experience trying to shoot this thing fast and change the magazine fast. But if you're used to this type of gun, you might not have the same problems. But none of those things are things that I can't overcome or make me go, I hate the gun. It's just things that I would have to get used to shooting an older style gun. So what are my final thoughts on the Browning High Power Practical. Well, I'm going to tell you, this might be the best shooting Browning high power I have ever shot. It might be my favorite, even beating the ones in my collection. This thing is pretty darn awesome. I love the way that it looks. I really like the way that it shoots. It's not perfect, and many of the same complaints I have about any Browning high power go into this one. I just really wish this beaver tail was a little bit longer. I have to be careful of that hammer bite. The triggers in these could always be a little bit better. But as a stock trigger and compared to other high powers I've shot, this thing is pretty darn awesome. The gun was reliable at the range. I didn't have any issues, any failures to feed, any failures to fire. The gun just ran reliably. It's a lot of fun to shoot, and it's very natural shooting. So on my star system, how would I rate the high power practical? Well, I could easily give this thing 4 out of 5 stars. And that's about the same rating I give most high powers. There's just enough about it that I go, I wish they would improve it. And who knows, I have not gotten a chance yet to try out one of the new FN high powers. They're supposed to address many of the things about this gun that I don't like. So who knows, it might be the high power 2.0 that I'm gonna absolutely love and give a 5-star review. But I still love this gun. This thing would be awesome in my collection if I had the chance to have it. But I'm so lucky that Richard let me borrow it. I didn't even know this model was ever offered, and it's too bad it has been discontinued. This thing is just pretty darn awesome. The only thing I think you could add to make this thing look even better is a set of those Brown Works grips. But besides that, this thing is awesome as it sits. So 4 stars out of 5 for the Browning High Power Practical. Such a beautiful pistol, so much history, and it's so much fun to shoot. So what do you guys think? Do you guys own any Browning High Powers? Have you ever even heard of the Practical model before? I would love to know in the comments section below and see if your experiences mirror mine. So, as always, thanks for watching.